Bucky,
Hiya.
and I'm totally missing all my markers as I try to tape this. That's okay though. We're starting off. We're back to our radio show. We missed you guys for the last few weeks, but we're back to discuss the future. As you know, Batman, Christopher Nolan closed it up this year with The Dark Knight Rises. And we're here to talk about the future of Batman. And I got some questions for my friends to see if they can tell me what their opinion is of the future of Batman. The first question, of course, will be reboot from the very beginning or just to start Batman the way Tim Burton did? Just start it with him already being Batman. Do we really need another, explanation of his origins? Bucky, you're first.
I honestly think that, like with the Spider-Man movies, just using that example, we've seen his origin a few times already. We get how he became Spider-Man. Okay, they can go to the next movie without the origin. We're used to it. They're superheroes. We know all the superheroes' origins by now.
Joe, your thoughts?
I kind of go with Bucky on that one. Batman's been around since 1939, so at some point his origin has been explained. Anybody who does not know his origin, even on a basic level, can figure out his origin. They can find out. I think just jump in and start giving us origins of the villains.
Right, try to get better origin with the villains. One question, of course, comes up with Batman. If you read the comic books and you watch the movies, then they're not canon. Sometimes they totally mess up the origins of the villains. They change everything about it. Do you want a movie that still has its own vision of Batman, or do you want them to be more canon? Joe, you'll start.
I would like them to stay as close to the comics as they can. I understand that with Hollywood you have your creativity, so if they do go a little bit away from that, that's fine. Like I said, I just wish they'd stick close to, especially like with Black Mask. I would love to see that villain in a Batman movie, and I want his origin to be very close.
Real quickly, who was Black Mask?
He was a guy who basically he inherited his parents' cosmetic company, and then I believe he tried to make shortcuts for it. So he ended up messing the whole company up, and creditors were coming down on him. He sought shelter in his parents' mausoleum.
Right.
And then at one point he chipped off a piece of his father's casket and fashioned it into his mask. And that's the kind of guy. He was still basically like a businessman. He wasn't like a typical rogues gallery where he wore this elaborate suit, or he didn't have white face paint and just goofy personality like the Joker. He just simply was a guy who was in a business suit and wore the Black Mask.
I see. Bucky, your thoughts?
What was the question?
The question again is: do you want to see movies that are more canon with the comic book, or should they go off with their own story?
That's right. There are some things that they can change. Like, for instance, I wouldn't mind introducing us to a villain that's not in the comic books, or, introduce us to some new villain that Batman has to fight.
There was talk that Christopher Nolan was going to do that.
But when you make Alicia Silverstone...
oh, wow! Yes!
A totally different character than what was in the comic books... then, like I said, some things are okay to change, some things are not.
Well, we always talk about bringing, better villains, different villains. What about his allies, though? Should we be seeing other, like Nightwing? Can they do a Robin, seriously, with a 10 or 12-year-old kid? Bucky, you'll start this one.
Actually, depending on how it's done, depending on who the director is, yes. Chris Nolan movies are very serious.
Joel Schumacher is the director.
No.
Okay, wow, that ends that discussion. Joe, your thoughts on bringing back his other allies?
That could actually be another branch you go into. Have a Batman and Robin movie. Mm-hmm. No relation to Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin, of course.
Right, we don't speak.
But flashback to how Batman met Robin. Which Robin it is. I would like to see a Robin, Tim Drake. Have him a little older. Mm-hmm. You could still keep the dark tone. Like, remember Arkham City, the video game?
Yes.
Robin makes a small appearance in it. That was Tim Drake.
Right.
And I think that would work if we focus, not focus on Robin, but just flash back to how they met and just how he became Robin. Very short part of the movie. And then keep the main focus on the villains.
Right.
The villains and the partnership between Batman and Robin.
Exactly. You know, in some ways, I have to admit, I think Christopher Nolan, he did a great job with Batman, but ultimately he got just a little too serious and a little too real with Batman. Seeing Batman in Dark Knight Rises was a good movie, but it was very painful to watch Christian Bale's performance, because he did try to be a more feeble Batman. And that was actually one part of that I had a problem with. He was such a feeble Batman at the beginning, and then through no extra training or anything, he became the Super Batman. Except for, he put on that little knee joint thing that gave him extra power in his knees. But other than that, they didn't do enough to say, hey, look, I'm back to being regular Batman again.
The Dark Knight Rises, the whole movie as a whole was very B+, B- at best. However, I do give the ending an A+. The ending was what made the movie.
Absolutely. The ending was probably... And the whole movie was actually very good. I was spellbound by it. I was shocked that they could do such a great job with No Man's Land. They had to alter it a little bit, of course.
When I saw Dark Knight Rises, I could actually go through and I could pick out when we'd see something. I'd be like, okay, they got that from No Man's Land. They got that from Nightfall.
Yes,
he did excellent work with this last one.
No, everything was very good. And one more question about Batman. Of course, the other comic that they have with Batman is The World's Finest, and that's one of the best series because it's with Batman and Superman. Would it be great to see a World's Finest or a team up, eventually with Batman and Superman?
Oh, absolutely. I think you could go multiple directions with that because basically whatever Superman is, Batman isn't. Whatever Batman is, Superman isn't. They make a really good team.
Right. Oh, they're very invincible. And actually, they did come out with the World's Finest cartoon, which was one of the best, cartoon movies I've ever seen. It's where Batman and Superman team up to go up against the Joker and Lex Luthor. And it had one of the most classic scenes ever in it.
That was actually in an episode, I believe, of Superman, Superman the Animated Series. They made it.
Yes,
it was like 3 episodes.
Right. Well, actually, that wasn't so much World's Finest because Bruce Wayne was missing. Batman was missing.
No,
during some of that.
No, that was Nightfall that you're thinking of, where Batman was missing.
Oh, okay.
World's Finest was the one where Joker and Lex Luthor teamed up.
Right.
And Joker says, you give me like $2 million or $1 million and I will kill Superman for you.
Right, I remember that. Bucky, your thoughts?
I'm not really a DC person. I'll get that off the bat right now. However, it would be nice to get, if they cast the next Batman, if they cast it right, almost anything is possible.
Exactly. Well, that's good for Batman. Now we're going to move on to what's happening on the next superhero. This one's getting his part 2, that is The Amazing Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was recently in it with Emma Stone. And here's the main thing I want to talk about, because for Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man Part 2, they're not talking about the Green Goblin being the next villain. They're talking about bringing in Mary Jane, but they're actually talking about bringing in Electro. They're talking about Jamie Foxx being Electro. I don't know if that's really going to happen or not. Those are just rumors right now. But with that being said, the question is, Gwen Stacy, do you think she'll survive Part 2? Bucky?
Well, considering that they're bringing in Mary Jane, I'm guessing that Gwen Stacy's going to bite it because, as we all know, with any story, the hero of the story has to become a better person by the end of the story. And
that means we kill them all.
And
his loved ones.
Okay, thank you for interrupting. Basically, at the end of the movie, he promised Gwen Stacy's father that he would leave her out of the whole superhero thing. But he one of the last lines he said is that he's pretty much intending to break the promise, which I think is leading up to the fact that because he broke his promise, Gwen Stacy's going to die because of that. And he'll feel even more guilty on top of the Uncle Ben thing.
Exactly. So, Joe, what are your thoughts? Do you think Do you think she could at least survive Part 2? Because I think we all know that they're going to kill her off eventually, but are they really going to kill her in Part 2? Your thoughts?
I would.
You would?
Yeah, I'd kill her in Part 2 and have, if they introduce Mary Jane, bring her in, and then have the whole Gwen Stacy, because that could set up, he's in with Gwen Stacy. And then you could also have him like, well, do I really want to get with Mary Jane, considering what happened with the last girl, and have him struggle with that part of his, just his relationship.
Right. I mean, to me, ideally, one of the best things they could do is actually have Gwen Stacy die at the very beginning of Part 2, or I mean, no further than the middle at least.
Right.
And then at the I want the very last shot of the movie to be Peter Parker answering his door with Mary Jane standing there and have her say, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot."
Right, that was the famous introduction to Mary Jane. Now, one thing that's interesting is how they started off with Mary Jane in the comic books versus how they bring in Mary Jane into the movies. Now, Mary Jane was always this girl that Aunt May was trying to set up Peter Parker with. However, you never saw her, and Peter really resisted the idea that they would ever go out on a date. Do you think they'll try that in the movies? Like, try to have Peter resist Mary Jane and, have them talking about her like that?
I think one of the comical things that they could do, if they do make it like the comic books, is that pretty much in Mary Jane's actual, in a way, first appearance in the comic books was in Amazing Spider-Man 25. But the way that they drew the panel that she was in, a flower was covering her face, but you did see the rest of her.
Right.
And so I think it'd be funny if they did something like that in the movie where you see her, but you don't see her type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in Amazing Spider-Man number 41, which was the first appearance of the Rhino, in the very last panel of that comic book, that's where you actually see her, full face and everything, where she says, "Face the tiger, you just hit the jackpot."
Right.
And to me, that is such an iconic scene. I do want to see that on film.
Yes, it would be nice if they could actually do that and do that one properly. It's hard to say. Joe, what are your thoughts on the future of Spider-Man and Mary Jane?
I don't know, because with me, I didn't really like the Amazing Spider-Man as much as the original stuff
With
Tobey Maguire.
Right.
I did. There were good parts of the Amazing Spider-Man. I'm really up in the air as far as I just want to see where they go with it. I don't really have any particular want or need for this new Spider-Man saga. Just show me what you got, and I'll make my judgment.
Right. I'm actually very excited for the second Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, the first one, of course, is the quote-unquote introduction, where we have to start off with him discovering his powers, how they work, and losing Uncle Ben and finding the motivation. One thing I didn't like was they changed the origin to the point where he's now like Batman. He doesn't know, they haven't captured Uncle Ben's killer, so that's how he became Spider-Man. He became Spider-Man not because he wants to fight crime and do what's right, but because he wants to find his uncle's killer, and he keeps looking for it. They didn't find him at the end of it. He got caught up with the whole lizard thing and stuff like that. But because the second one has always been better, I know a lot of people would disagree with me that the second Spider-Man was not as good as some of the others. But I did like the Dr. Octopus storyline and that whole thing better the second time around. That being said, we look forward to the future of Amazing Spider-Man, and we hope it's going to be great. And that's all we have for tonight, kiddies. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.
Take it easy.
See you later.
All right, have a good day, and see you next time.